And what enables us to do it now is technology. When Jim shot his first 3D movie, which was for Universal Theme Parks, T2 3D, I think the cameras weighed 600 pounds?
Well, yeah, the cameras, there were different sizes, but there was like 320 pounds, but then when you put it together with what had to move the camera, it was starting to get pretty massive. So we got it down to 30 pounds for Avatar.
So now you can shoot a live movie with the same flexibility, if not more, than you could a 2D movie. And then in the exhibition side, you no longer have to watch with red and blue glasses that frankly made everything look like that French word, caca, and you instead be watching in high quality. So it's technology that's driving it in all of our screens, computer screens, everything's going to go to 3D. Another question?
Thank you. My name is Tom Rooney, and I had the privilege of working on Star Wars through my years at Fox, and never thought that that experience would be exceeded. Congratulations, you're exceeded with Avatar.
Well, thank you.
Let's go to BD Live if we can. Is the BD Live material that resides up on that, will that be changed after the street date? And does the BD Live situation change from content to content, from country to country?
I think it will change after the street date. We'll have different content available before the street date rolling up. We'll just put new content on, sort of on a weekly basis, from the weeks from here to the release of the Blu-ray. And then after that, that's a great thing about BD Live. We can always add to it. We can see what the consumer is looking for, what they feel is maybe missing from the experience that they have, and we can add things as things evolve and continue to update that. And I think that there will be, down the road, customability for all the international marketplaces. We live in a connected world. We can no longer prepare material creatively just for North America. We have to think of this as a global world. As the movie suggests, we're all connected, and we look forward to doing that through BD Live.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thanks for the question.
Peter Stanton from Deluxe. Jim, I agree that 3D is here to stay, but we've also seen some good 3D and some bad 3D. And when you look at the movies that are out there in the catalogue of the entertainment industry, how would you approach 2D to 3D conversion? And are there some movies that you would say, that's a holy cow, I'm not going to touch that, it stays as it is, I'm not going to put that into 3D?
Yeah, obviously that's a kind of controversial subject right now. And the studios like the idea of taking a movie that's in production and converting it into 3D, but they've tried to shoehorn this entirely new process into their normal post-production without opening up the schedule of the movie. And I maintain that you can't do a good conversion of a 2-hour movie with high quality in a few weeks like they tried to do with Clash of the Titans. And I don't even throw that movie under the bus because my buddy Sam is in it. But I think everybody sort of realized that this was a point at which people had gone too far. It was the first stumble. You see another stumble with the most recent Harry Potter movie from the same studio making the same mistake, except really getting spanked for it now because they didn't get the film done. They announced it in 3D. They threw a bunch of money at trying to convert it to 3D in post-production. It simply didn't work. They just didn't get it done. They blamed it on quality, but the inside report on that is shots just weren't done. They had no choice in the matter but to cancel the 3D release. So what's the message here? The message is if you want to do it right and you want to do it with high quality and give the audience the premium experience that they're paying for with that premium ticket price, then you have two choices. You can shoot the movie in 3D, or you can spend the money and the time to do a conversion that's indistinguishable from it having been shot in 3D. Now to do that, you're dropping, I would say, realistically, 6 months into your post-production schedule that wasn't there before. Now if you're making a $150 million movie, what's the cost of the money for that additional 6 months? Nobody's factoring that into the comparative analysis between shooting in 3D and doing a post-conversion. My personal philosophy is that post-conversion should be used for one thing and one thing only, which is to take library titles that are favorites, that are proven, and convert them into 3D, whether that's Jaws or E.T. or Indiana Jones, you Close Encounters, those are all Spielberg films. Well, they're all my favorite movies. Or Titanic or whatever it is. That's what conversion should be used for, because unless you have a time machine to go back and shoot it in 3D back then, you have no other choice. But for me right now, the only viable alternative, the best alternative, is if you're going to make if you want to release a movie in 3D, make it in 3D. It's much more natural, it's much more intuitive for the filmmaker, for the director of photography. You can see your results on a day-to-day basis. It makes the medium fun. 3D shouldn't be forced down by the studios onto the filmmakers by being tacked on or slapped on as a layer after the fact. It should be an integral part of the creative cinematic art, and that's really what's missing. So, and the business modeling is flawed as well. They're comparing a number for what it costs to shoot a 3D movie to a hypothetical number that a startup company on a lowball bid is telling you will give you the equivalent, but it's not the equivalent. The number is flawed. It may be lower than the cost to shoot in 3D, but to actually compare apples to apples and to give you a number and the amount of time and the cost of that time for what it would do to look equivalent in quality, that number is going to be higher. You know, so anyway, I could go on for hours about this, and it's not really the right venue for it. But you know, all of this stuff is going to work itself out. And I think the thing that's going to be really the coffin nail for conversion is when the broadcasters start broadcasting thousands, if not tens of thousands of hours a year in 3D. And the way to do that is with live production. So if you've got, you know, 5,000 cameras out there shooting every day, you know, doing live sports, feeding in over many different network delivery systems, it's going to be pretty hard for Hollywood producers to claim that 3D is just too complicated for me to make my movie in 3D when it's being done every single day by people a lot less talented and a lot less well funded.
I also want to quote somebody, and that somebody's you, that you said, you wouldn't make a movie in black and white and colorize it. Don't shoot a movie in 2D and dimensionalize it. Go shoot in 3D. 3D is a creative process that uses technology. And when you take these movies like, you know, Clash of the Titans, Louis Leterrier was the director, but he wasn't even allowed to be a part of the conversion process because he had to finish the movie. That's right, because he had to finish the movie. So it's a creative process. Question over here?
Hi, Jon Landau with Sony Pictures. I have a small question and then a larger question. The small question is, for the additional 16 minutes, did you also have that rendered in 3D?
Yeah, that's a good question. We did. We future-proofed ourselves on that because, you know, eventually we're going to want to, when we go to 3D releases of Avatar, we're going to want to be able to make all of those additional features and additional versions of the film available in 3D as well. So we went to 3D finish on a lot of the stuff we did.
And my other question was, you mentioned that you've already mastered Avatar for home viewing in 3D. And I was wondering if you could share your thoughts about how that should be done properly to translate a 3D movie from the cinema to the home, and you know, what tools did you use, and are you happy with the results?
The truth is, we did very little. You know, I went back to the same colorist who had done the DI for the film. He'd done all the colors. Yeah, what we did was when we were mastering the film for release, we didn't treat the 3D as a separate process from the color and the brightness grading and so on of the normal DI process. We just rolled it all into one creative process. And so our colorist was, you know, our DI guy was actually doing the 3D on a DaVinci Resolve, and it just became a very natural way to work. So when we came back to the film later, all we had to do was just some very minor tweaks to the black levels and so on, so that it would play well on the monitors. We didn't adjust the stereo at all. We just went to our digital 3D master of the film. We didn't make any stereo adjustments at all. And if you're doing stereo right, you shouldn't have to. You know, there's this sort of myth out there that you have different stereo for different screen sizes. And I maintain that you can watch Avatar on a 50-inch screen, you know, with the glasses, or you can watch it on an 80-foot screen. And it's the same. It's not obviously the same experience because the brain knows that it's a smaller screen, but the stereoscopic effect is identical. It's really, it's not something that I've ever personally empirically observed that you need to do different 3D for different, you know, for different screen sizes. Now, I think if you were creating content directly to go to small devices, and you knew people were going to watch it on a phone or on an iPad, you know, you might want to pump a little more depth into the scene. And you know, I think that might be valid, just to kind of really amp it up, just to make it more effective on a small screen. Or when you're talking about a movie like Avatar, you're going to try to watch it on the biggest display you can anyway, at least most people would. And so, you know, the 3D I think is common between the different size platforms.
It goes back to the philosophy of 3D, that the 3D is really for us a window into a world, and not a world coming out of a window. And by making it an immersive experience, I think it's a lot easier to do that. We don't use floating windows and things like that to change the framing or anything. We take the way it was shot and play it across the different cuts that way.
There's a lot of myths around 3D, and there's this idea that you can go back and you can play with convergence after the fact, and you can affect how much things come out of the screen. The reality is there's no screen. The way the mind, I believe, the way the viewer watches 3D is they don't think of it as a screen. They think of it as a window. And if you're looking at something that's relatively close in an image, let's say it's a shot of an interior, a head and shoulders shot, well, that's the equivalent socially of being 5 to 6 feet away from somebody. So your belief system that's happening subconsciously while you're watching, whether it's on a 50-inch plasma or a 50-foot projection, is that there's a window. And that window, it has to, because the way windows work is we look through them to something. If that something is 5 feet away, the window is closer. That's how our brain works. Now there's a paradox there, because the window in a movie theater isn't closer. The window's much farther away. The window might be 30, 40, 50 feet away. But subconsciously, we still think of it like a window. And we ignore the paradox that the edge of the window is farther away than the subject that we're seeing through the window. And this is the thing that has messed up stereographers for a century, literally, who said that you can't have an object be close with it and have it touch the frame line, because the frame line will create a kind of cognitive dissonance at that point. But it doesn't happen because of what I call hierarchies of perception. The perception that you're looking through a window is more important in the viewing experience than the perception that the window is 50 feet away and the subject is 5 feet away. Because otherwise you could never do a movie. You could never do a close-up. Because in a close-up, the body would be cut off here or here, and it would be breaking the frame line, and it would be triggering that paradox. But it doesn't bother anybody in real life. And the way I sum it up is, if you're looking at the frame line, then you've got a dog for a movie. People should be looking at what's happening.
So I think we have time for one more question. Apologize for those of you who won't get to ask your questions, so we'll go over here.
Hi, Kevin Mancuso, Media Planet. I'm actually publishing a paper on 3D technology and home entertainment for the LA Times that's focusing on helping people realize that 3D is about to take off like we saw HDTV back in the late 90s. And what I want to know from you is, what is the feeling, Mr. Landau touched on it briefly at the end there, just knowing that being a masterful storyteller and filmmaker, that your audience can now appreciate your work in their home the way you meant it to be seen.
Yeah, I think it's great. I love the idea that 3D is coming to the home. I love the fact that when the CE companies built their first generation, it was actually several generations in now, but their first kind of broad release generation of the technology, it was good. Because it could have been another crappy settlement for a lower standard, like anaglyphic glasses and decoding the red and blue system. All of these inferior processes have fallen away. Our big challenge right now is just generating enough content to fill those screens, because the broad acceptance of the screens will be driven by content. People have to see stuff.
And I think you believe, Jen, that it's not just going to be the avatars of the world as feature films that are in 3D, but it's going to be My Dinners with Objects. It's going to be all movies going to be.
Well, we can't make the Avatar movies fast enough to do more than we've already done to drive 3D. So I think it's going to come from sports, it's going to come from music, it's going to come from comedy. I haven't seen anything yet, personally, that didn't benefit from 3D. I mean, I watched the Masters tournament, golf in 3D. It was great. I hate golf. I would never watch golf in a million years. But I was watching that because it was in 3D. It was really cool.
Well, thank you all very much. Have a great rest of your day.